Hello, welcome to my video. Thanks for joining. Um, this is my first video, first one of these that I have done. I've had this on in mind to do for a little while. Uh, for a long time I've looked for some way that I might be able to try to share some of the ideas that I've developed and accumulated over the past 30 years or so as, as I've looked for answers, look for solutions. How does life occur in our life, and why, and how how can we do something about that if what we have in our life is not exactly what we'd like to be having. So I've had in mind to do this for some time, and I just haven't. Because I haven't been able to quite figure out exactly how to do this. I'm not one to do public speaking, so this is very not in my comfort zone. So please bear with as we work through this, and I try to get a handle on how do we want to go about doing this, and what exactly we're going to share here. But we're going to be talking about a lot of things um, having to do with the way our life happens and the way it occurs. And the main thing that I'd like to try to share is what we can do to create change in our life if there are things in our about our life that we don't like. What can we do? Um, this has been a quest for me that has been ongoing for many years, about 30 years, and it began as it began as basically trying to find ways that were effective to do something about what really wasn't working in my life, what we would call the issues in life. And at that time, there was not very many resources that were offered that seemed to accomplish anything. There were some of the the books that were popular, such things as Power of Positive Thinking and a few others that were along that line. And I found that everything that I tried to look into, it really did not seem to make any difference for me. So it was very frustrating. And so I launched into, I guess, what I now call a quest for finding answers, finding understanding, to get to the truth of the matter. So we're going to be talking about a lot of that. We're going to be talking about some of the answers that I've found along the way, and to try to drop to the to get to the chase here. I found some things along the way that work, and they're very successful, very effective, and it's fairly unique. I've not found anything else available that seems to provide an understanding of what causes stuff to be in our life that we don't really want, and how we can do something about it that's effective. And this has come from looking at many different resources. I've studied and read a lot of books on a variety of subjects. It started off with a lot of self-help books, and then I branched off into a variety of subjects of the metaphysics and Eastern philosophy. I've studied the subconscious, hypnosis, energy work, energy healing, a lot of holistic principles. And along the way, I've picked up a few pieces here and there from different sources that seem to be part of this, and have accumulated a range of ideas that I've put together that seem to address this whole thing and can provide results. So just to put context in where we are at the moment, it is, we're in the first week of May of 2020. So we are currently about a month into the COVID-19 lockdown. So things are a little casual here, and as you can see, currently I'm kind of casual. So this is going to be a casual conversation. So sorry we don't have impressive studios and professional settings and professional technologies going on. This is just me and my phone, and hopefully you listening. So please bear with as we get going. I hope to develop some of these ideas as we get into this. So, and another reason this has taken a while. So over the years, I've thought about trying to write books. I've thought about trying to put together programs, teaching programs that could be downloaded on the internet and so forth, and just found myself stuck in how do I convey this wide range of ideas that I've accumulated in a way that would make sense, because a lot of these ideas need to have an understanding of another idea before this idea I'm talking about makes sense, because then we have to understand this idea in order for this other part of the process to make some sense. So this will be a little bit stream of thought. This is not scripted, as you can tell, I'm sure. So this will be stream of thought as this comes to mind. So this will probably also be a series of videos. And I'm not sure how many there will be, or as I said, this is why I have not gotten started with this before now, because I just have not really been able to get my head around how do I organize all of this. So I'm hoping that we can just have a few casual conversations, and maybe you'll find some benefit from this. But just to put in here to know that I do work with people directly. If you have an interest in this, I think that as I post this on a YouTube channel, I will probably put some contact information if you wish to find out more about this and work together directly. So we've used up 8 minutes so far, so not bad. I like to start from, let's think a little bit about what contributes to how we perceive life, how we experience life. So if you think a little bit about, we could start with saying, okay, so who are you? Think about that a little bit. Who are you, and what comes to mind? Most people, what comes to mind will be some form of labels. So it could be, I'm a man or I'm a woman. Some of these labels might be about what I do in life. It could be something about a work position or occupation. It could be, I'm a housewife, I'm a mother. It could be, I'm a husband and a father. It could be, I'm an American, as I am, or where I live, rather. So one could identify oneself as related to where one lives, or one's culture. And we find that our society tends to give us these labels based on opinions of what is considered to be important. And so we can look at that a little bit, of how much of who we see ourselves to be comes from influences by society. But what we want to look at is this really who we truly are? Or are these things that we have been told who we are? So let's look at that a little bit. And let's also be thinking about the different ways that we look at ourselves to assess who we are. And there's a tendency to put an evaluation or an assessment of, like, for example, a common thing for people to have is, am I good enough? Or do we consider ourselves to be worthy or deserving? Now, do these things influence the way we experience our life? And this, we'll get into this more as we go along. But let's look at going back to what I started with. And so, sorry, this will be stream of thought. And I do have a tendency to splinter into trains of thought. And I will maybe pursue one train of thought for a minute that relates to another stream of thought, and then we'll pursue that stream of thought for a moment. And hopefully, as we compare some of these things, they will come together in a way that hopefully will make some sense to others. Another aspect of this is that some of the things that we're talking about may be familiar to you, and some of them may not. In fact, I think we'll find that a lot of these ideas that I have been struggling with trying to find a suitable way to communicate to people, a lot of this is different than what is been made known on a public in a public way in society. So these ideas are going to be very different maybe than what you're accustomed to. It may seem very foreign. It may not make any sense. But then for a few, perhaps it may make a lot of sense. And some of this may make sense after we've had a chance to actually work through all of this and discuss it. So, which brings me back to we human beings, our condition of how we experience life in the world is a bit complicated. We're complicated creatures. And a lot of that has to do with our ability to be able to think and feel and have consciousness. So a lot of what we're talking about actually, where we want to end up with, is we want to be looking at our consciousness and how it is that we have consciousness and can be able to have consciousness, and what part that plays in our experience of what we consider to be life. Okay, there's a little tangent there. So let's go back. We were talking about how do we develop these ideas that we've got, that we carry around with us, that we think determine and identify who we are. So perhaps we identify ourselves according to our culture, or maybe race, or it could be our religion is what we feel defines who we are. In a lot of our society, the role that we play as work or a profession defines who we are. That puts a label on who we are. But I would like to propose the thought of, does that really determine who we are as a person? Who are we truly, really within as a being of consciousness? So we have these labels that we have. Husband, wife, I'm a worker in this field, I do this or I do that. I'm a performer, I'm a writer, I'm an artist. Or I'm an office manager. Where do these labels come from? Well, for a lot of people, these are just labels that we've always carried, that we've always accepted because it's what we were told. Now, where does that come from? Well, if we think back, these were probably things that we were told as children. Most of the ideas that we have about ourselves originate from when we were very young. And we'll get into that in much more detail a little later on. But one of the key factors that we want to establish that is playing a major part in what influences how we experience life is related to the early period of childhood. Now, we may have had some exposure to some material that says, oh yes, there is a formation period in early childhood. Such as developing the motor skills, such as walking or talking. Now, those views are fairly limited in nature, and I'm proposing that there is much more involved than what the traditional views are willing to let you be aware of. So, I'd like to propose an idea or a principle that I have found, in that from the time we're born, for about the first 6 years or so, each person is in an ongoing process of basically determining who we are. So this is a process of observing our environment, observing the things that occur in our environment, observing what we hear other people say, observing the things that we see people do, and the experiences that we have during that time. And then we have a response to those experiences. So a lot of what is going on during that period of time is we're simply just trying to figure out what is going on in this environment where we are. We're trying to figure out, what does it mean? We're trying to figure out, who am I? How does all this work? How does the world work? How does life work? What is going on? And in the process, we have people telling us what it is that we are supposed to accept and what we're supposed to believe, which we'll find to be a very important word, is belief. So a lot of we're told from the very start, we are told by everyone around us what it is that we are supposed to accept and how we are supposed to see ourselves. So we're told that we're a boy, we're told that we're a girl, we're told that we are some ethnic variety, we're told that we have various other customs and traditions that are related to our culture that we're in. And we are also exposed to, and we hear things being said that are based in the culture of our family environment, in which we are exposed to a lot of ideas and opinions that come from someone else. But as a child, we are looking at those around us as the ones who are supposed to know. And so we have a tendency to accept what we're told, and when we accept what we're told, then that gets, how do we say this? It's recorded by our consciousness in a special area of the consciousness called the subconscious. And we're going to get into a lot more discussion about the subconscious as we go along. And we'll find how important or how much of a role that the subconscious plays in how we experience life. So I'm trying to introduce some of these key elements, key components that make up this system of experience that we call being human and experiencing life. So far, we can look at the beginning, which is when we're born, and we want to get the importance of how much what happens during those first 5 or 6 years affects our life. Because what this does is it puts into place basically everything that forms the basis, the foundation of how we experience life as we grow into adulthood and as we experience life as an adult. That's the main thing that we want to get at this point. But it becomes, it's fairly complex about how this happens. Because we are constantly in this mode of looking at what's going on and trying to interpret what is it that's happening. Sometimes people say things that tell us what it is we're supposed to interpret. Sometimes we thought or think, as that child, we think that we interpreted what is happening around us and that we think that we understand it. The problem is the ability of the child to interpret correctly is limited because there is no experience that's there to work with or to base this on. So there's a tendency for the child to draw conclusions about things. And there's also a tendency for the child to misinterpret things that are happening or that are said, to misunderstand things that are said or that are happening. And there are certain tendencies that are common for children to have in how we interpret what happens and the conclusions that we give them. So as we see things that happen, we have a response of some kind. We interpret things. We form a perception about that, which is a word that I use to refer to our thoughts. That as we form a thought about something that's like our interpretation, I keep using that word because that's what's happening, is it's all basically about interpreting. And then we form conclusions about those interpretations that I call perceptions. And in that perception, we build into what we think that it means. We build meaning into what we have observed and the conclusions that we come to in the perceptions. And this meaning is another, it seems to be a human thing. That we humans, we attach meaning to everything. It's not always correct or accurate, but we attach meaning to things. So we could say that certain events that occur, the event itself does not necessarily have meaning to it until we give it a meaning. And meanings can be something that's good or it can be bad, it can be right, it can be wrong. And this is another aspect of what it is that we're being exposed to during this time period of childhood, is that those around us are telling us what is supposed to be good, what is supposed to be bad. But it's an opinion that somebody else formed. and tell us that this is what it is that we're supposed to agree to or believe. And beliefs are another aspect of what is happening during this period of time. So we've talked about, we observe something, we form an interpretation of it. That is and we have thoughts about those things. Those are qualities that are mental in nature. So we have, and this is another aspect of this that I haven't gotten to yet, but there's another principle that we'll be talking about the different aspects of who we are as humans. We have several different aspects that make us human. One is our emotions, one is our mind, and one is the spirit. That is in addition to the physical body. And we may have heard some of these references in the Eastern holistic references of body, mind, soul, or similar variations. But what I have found through the various resources that I've gone through is that we can look at this as that holistic precept of body, mind, soul, or body, mind, spirit, can be looked at as being these aspects of our human makeup, or what composes us as humans. And that in addition to our physical, there are these other aspects. There's our whole emotional aspect of the feelings that we have. There is the aspect of the mind, which is the mental in nature. That's our thoughts that we have. And then there's the spiritual aspect, which I have come to think of as being our beliefs, the things that we accepted as what is true. And we'll go into each of these aspects in more detail a little later as we go along. I'm getting up to about the time that I wanted to keep this recording to, so I'm trying to find a good way to bring this to a bit of a conclusion. So I've been trying to come up with an overview, a little bit of an overview, to get us started in this discussion. And that what we've established so far, just to recap, basically, is that when we're born, we have a process that we're going through for several years. Some people call this a formation period. And I see this as establishing the basics of who we see ourselves to be, how we see life to be. And I kind of call this like a configuration period. It's almost like the configuration system on a computer system. I don't play video games, but what little I do know is I know that sometimes when you start a video game for the very first time, when it first starts up, you get to choose things that you want for your character in the video game to have. And you're choosing these various characteristics. And I think that's called a configuration period. But we're choosing capabilities and characteristics for our character in the video game. And I like to use this analogy because it's very similar to what happens as we enter into this world and set out to have our experience of life. So we've talked a little bit about that there are these qualities that are important. There's emotions, there's the mind, or the thoughts that we form, and then there is what I refer to as the spiritual aspect and the beliefs. The principle I'm trying to put together here is that these aspects combine together in an extremely important way during this period of childhood in these first few years, that is creating our basis for how we will live and experience our life. And I think my video is about to reach its capacity, so I'm going to wrap this up. I hope that we've gotten started in this conversation. I'm sorry if I'm rambling, and I hope I've managed to keep you interested in this so far. But what I want to say is that these principles, as we start to work through them, give us the keys for how we can actually create changes in our life if we have things in our life that we don't want to have. We can use these principles to actually change those patterns, I call them, that we don't want. And actually, if we apply these principles in the way that I've developed, we can actually have those unwanted patterns to go away, to disappear, basically disappear as if they've never occurred. This is the purpose of all these recordings, is to share this with you so that you can see that it is possible that if no matter what shape or form something may be taking in life that we don't want, some kind of an unwanted pattern, we can apply certain principles that give us a way to remove that. This is the way, this is the basis for creating change, for creating transformation, as I call it, in our life. And we will be, as we go through this, I will be talking in more detail about how we can actually accomplish